All right, welcome back, everybody. Finally, I had some technical difficulties with my computer system, which delayed getting my part one video done. So here I am today, finally going to present part one to you. I cannot wait. I'm excited to share this three-part article with you and to give you some insight into the next evolution in the wellness and movement industry. If you don't know who I am, I'm Brian Schwager. I'm the founder of Wellness Movement Services. And if you haven't watched my brief introduction video, which is on my Wellness Movement Services YouTube channel, then I would watch that because I'm going to skip really what brought me to doing this particular article and what brought me to where I am right now in my career. 40 40 years typically, basically rather, I've been doing this. I want to also add that I wrote my first exercise program at age 16. I was already drafting out, handwriting with pencil and paper, exercise programs I was designing for myself. I want to add that to my history because this is my purpose. And like I said in the brief introduction video, my knowledge, yes, I studied and I went back to school after being a high school dropout, and I went to workshops and I consumed as much information as I could regarding exercise science, regarding nutrition. But then things started to just come through me. And, you know, my thanks goes to God for, giving me this knowledge and this wisdom, for having things, people, places, books show up when they were supposed to. Everything happens right on time. So this isn't about me. This is about the truth. This is about me actually uncovering the reasons why we're getting sick, why we got sick, going all the way back to when I really dove into this in the early 90s. So without further ado, because I could belabor that point because I'm totally passionate about that part of my journey, now I have some really, really great information that's going to help you and give you the power back where it belongs so you could take control of your wellness and movement. So I guess the best place to start is looking at our current state of health and well-being. Now, current means now, 2024. But I'll tell you something. Even going back to the 90s when I was doing all sorts of presentations on health and fitness, the statistics were up then. And as I wrote articles and did presentations throughout the 90s, going into the early part of the 21st century, I would constantly see these statistics rising, and it didn't make any sense. I kept thinking to myself, why don't we start seeing a decline in a lot of these health challenges? Instead, we saw more and more statistics, and then there were more and more health challenges being presented. And being presented meaning that in my career during the 90s, which was one of the things that prompted me to go back to school, is when I would sit across the kitchen table, when I would do personal training out of the home, or my desk at my office, and I'm doing a discovery session with a client, just consulting with them briefly and getting a little bit of their health history. There were more and more challenges that they were reporting compared to maybe like the late 80s or early 90s. And what was I going to do with that? Especially with the fact that everybody should consult with their physician before starting an exercise program. Not that everybody does that, but when people come to you and they have high cholesterol, they have hypertension, and they have other risk factors with maybe diabetes, or maybe there's a health history risk factor with cancer, cardiovascular disease, or diabetes. In the fitness industry, we know that exercise is a great mitigation to a lot of health challenges. But as you're going to learn in this three-part series, is that it's not always the best medicine. Movement is medicine if it's properly prescribed. So what I'm talking about here are just health-related challenges as such. Then in the middle to late 90s, I started hearing the terms autoimmune, not only from my clients, but I had soon discovered just before I relocated to North Carolina in 2003 that I myself had an autoimmune challenge. What do you do with that? Now, I'm not a nutritionist by any stretch of the imagination, and God knows that in the 90s, I had some of the best people associated with my business. And as I mentioned in that brief overview, as I call it, I knew that I needed to align myself with experts. And I started out that way right at the beginning. Even in my career, when I started working, not only as a personal trainer, but I also had a part-time job in clinical settings where there were a variety of different practitioners. So I was learning early on to coordinate, to listen, to learn, and how to have a conversation, an intelligent conversation with practitioners regarding, at the time, patients who had not only orthopedic challenges, but also had health-related challenges like high blood pressure and so on. And then I developed a team around my company because one of my mentors told me that you should surround yourself with experts because you can't be the expert in all things. I studied nutrition, I studied behavioral psychology. Of course, I studied biomechanics and physiology, etc. But what I did is I aligned myself with physical therapists and physical therapy clinics that had orthopedic doctors and physicians in there. And as I mentioned in that brief overview video, the very first clinic I worked at, there was actually an acupuncturist on staff as well. So I was learning real quick about how meridians, the meridian system, works in concert with the muscular system and organ systems, etc. But here's my point. No, I'm not a nutritionist, and I wasn't an orthopedic fitness specialist yet. I was fast becoming one, but I knew when to refer out. One of my other mentors said, when in doubt, refer out. So if I have a client who has high blood pressure and high cholesterol, and I have to moderate their exercise protocol based on their, maybe their blood pressure, and not giving them too many suggestions when it comes to nutrition. Yeah, I can give them some basic suggestions like don't eat processed foods. And, if they're diabetic, you want to stay away from foods that are going to, hyper activate the insulin response in their body. But I would refer them out. And I would learn from these practitioners, and I started studying more. But I've never worked alone. I wanted to get that one thing straight. But here, going back to my point, the statistics were rising. And that's what prompted me to go back to school. But I also learned early on that you can't treat one part of the body, one system of the body. So if they have cardiovascular disease, you just don't treat their diet and you don't just modify exercise. There are other contributing factors, which is what you're going to learn in part one, which is going to be part of the evolution. But I'm scratching my head, watching these statistics go up. I'm writing articles, and when I write articles and do presentations, I do research. And that's when I started to notice that these statistics were rising and rising. And then when I relocated to North Carolina to go back to school and work with a high-level chiropractor who was also a functional neurologist and a functional medicine doctor. Uh, Again, patients that we were seeing, not only did they have orthopedic issues, but they had a lot of biological issues as well. They had digestive issues and other imbalances, neurotransmitters I was learning about. And then when I went back to school at the Czech Institute post college, that's when I really began to embrace a real holistic approach. And I've always practiced holistically. I've always looked at the body as a unit, but things really changed in 2004, and I'll get to that. The current state of our health and well-being continues to decline. We continue to see increases in cardiovascular and heart disease, obesity, and all forms of cancer, including now turbo cancers. And since the start of the pandemic 4 years ago, we have seen a dramatic increase in myocarditis, pericarditis, and heart attacks. Now, that's another conversation I'd like to have for another presentation, is this whole pandemic conversation. And I'll tell you, based on what I learned, I never bought into it. And I never bought into any of these flus and avian flus and these bird flus and all these other viral invasions we had all of our life. But in the late 80s into the 90s, I fast become aware, based on the circle of influence that I had around me, there was something not right. And I'll get to this briefly in this presentation. But now in 2024, the game has changed, because since the pandemic, we've seen a sudden increase in cancer, sudden. And that's why they're calling it turbo cancer. And it's happening even at a younger age. Now, again, we know that cancer was bad back in the day, right? My mother died at age 47 from cancer. And I had clients who lost their parents, brothers, sisters, etc., at different age groups. So we already knew that this was a real concern, but now it's accelerated for some reason, right? And then these sudden heart attacks and all these changes we're having in the cardiovascular and respiratory area. And again, I'm not blaming it on a respiratory virus. And, buyer beware. Let me tell you that much up front. And I have supporting evidence to go down that rabbit hole. I was going to go down that rabbit hole in this presentation, but I thought I would cover the basic statistics to show you they really never declined, but our health and well-being did. And then the rise in autoimmune challenges like diabetes, lupus, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and increases in thyroid-related conditions. I was dealing with all that at the end of the 90s, coming into the beginning of the 21st century. Dealing with that meaning, once I relocated to North Carolina, and I was working with a functional nutritionist who was also a chiropractor, advanced level, I might add, and a functional neurologist. He was teaching me, because he was looking at their labs, their blood work, and I did corrective exercise for his patients. And he was teaching me, he was doing labs on me as well. He was teaching me how he looks at labs differently than traditional Western medicine, because their role is to keep you sick. If you haven't figured that out by now, you must have, because if you're watching anything that I put out, I think way outside the box. And again, I got proof, but we had clients that had fibromyalgia, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. We were working with other neurological conditions like neuropathy, strokes, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, epilepsy, and seizures. And I will add that also the epilepsy and the seizures have also grown dramatically since the pandemic. So what I'm getting at is they never went down. And you know, me being a baby boomer, I'm 62 years old, and I've always embraced a holistic mind body approach, but obviously the public didn't. That's why I was out there teaching the way I was in the 90s, getting my clients to look at the entire body and to change lifestyle and to lower their risk factors, or my clients were coming off their meds. But that's my point. The ones that weren't my clients, the rest of the population, that continued to accelerate. Now, from a musculoskeletal perspective or orthopedic, we continue to see a steady increase in neck, shoulder, back, hip, and knee pain, osteoarthritis, osteopenia, osteoporosis, hip fractures, and a host of movement impairments and imbalances. Now, this is my area of expertise, ladies and gentlemen. I was on the front lines and I was seeing this firsthand. Not only was I seeing it in the 90s, because I worked in plenty of orthopedic related industries, part-time, of course, because I was running my own personal training business. But at that time, about 70 to 80% of my clients had some sort of an orthopedic challenge, whether they had pain or not. They had some sort of an orthopedic challenge. And then it grew from 40 to 80% had some sort of health challenge, which I just went through between the cancers, cardiovascular disease, and the autoimmune and the neurological challenges. In all, almost 30 million Americans are living with 5 or more chronic diseases. So just think about somebody in your family, your relatives, you have friends. Think about their health. In fact, I've often heard that in the general conversation day to day now, people are discussing their health challenges. They're talking about their obesity, their heart disease, their diabetes, their hypertension, their cancers. This is, we're not talking just about the weather anymore when we get together with our friends, family members, etc. So again, perplexed by this. But the approaches that I was starting to use in the 90s and that I used specifically in the 21st century when I relocated and went on with my education, they were working. These approaches were working. So what were we doing? Now let's go back for a second. We talked about these statistics and I was on a little bit of a tangent about the cancers and the cardiovascular disease and the way and the methods I was utilizing, or the practitioners I was working with were utilizing to get my clients off of meds. There are several ways to enhance the health of your body naturally without drugs, and this is just a brief overview. And when I get into part 2, I'm going to blow your mind on this topic even more. Now, I did a lot of research on the immune system. I fell into that because my mother was sick with cancer. I was still a young personal trainer at the time. Years later, after my father passed away, and I was getting deeper and deeper into my career, I stumbled across some incredible information about the immune and lymphatic system and went down that rabbit hole for about 9 years, having conversations with lymphologists, psychoneuroimmunologists, studying immunology, studying the immune system, and learning why the body gets sick. And the information goes all the way back to the 1800s. But I digress. Their greatest defense against cancer and all illnesses, your immune system. Your immune system is your number one defense. Now, most people out there now know this, but when I was giving talks, doing presentations all over, especially on the immune system, I did that, like I mentioned in my brief overview video, in various parts of the United States. I would look at my audience And I would ask them, how many of you out there know how your immune system really works? And barely any hands went up. But some did, and some had some pretty darn good remedies. And then I would ask them about their lymphatic system, and barely nobody knew about how their lymphatic system worked. And I'll just say here that your lymphatic system is your sewage detoxification system of the body, and it doesn't have a pump like your blood. What pumps your blood? What moves your blood? Your heart. Your lymphatic system needs movement and needs electrical impulse. So does your blood and your heart. That's for another topic for another day. But hardly anybody knew about the lymphatic system. And how important is it to move sewage out of any system, even your body? Now, you know what would happen if your sewage backed up in your home? That would create quite a problem. And that's where bugs and bacteria and all those nasty little things grow, is within that sewage and that sludge. So I'll get into that. So your immunity. And right at the beginning of the pandemic, I did plenty of information about this through the 90s, warning people, empowering people, I really should say, to take care of your immune system. Not just take vitamin C, but I mean really boost it. If you want to know more in detail, let me know. But I'm not just talking about taking vitamin C and a few other antioxidants. You're going to find out in part 2 that 80% of your immune system resides in an area that you were well unaware of, as well as I was well unaware of until about 2007. And I had studied physiology in college, but they didn't talk about this particular field, I'll call it. I don't mean field of expertise either, but they didn't talk about it at all. In fact, I didn't learn anything about this field, I'll call it an energy field, until I studied at the Czech Institute, until I started having conversations with practitioners in the field of energy medicine. So then, like I was saying, it's about the sludge. It's about cleaning up your body. You remember the germ theory? You probably never heard of the terrain theory. Now look at these two fish bowls here. This is a very simplistic image that reflects the inside of your cellular system, which is 75% water. The germ theory said we attack the germs to eradicate disease. The terrain theory suggests that if you clean the environment where the cells live, so you change the host. So when your body is a host, you're hosting a party, you make a mess, you got to clean it up. Otherwise, you're going to have bugs. Imagine if you didn't clean up your garbage for months. You don't even want to know what would be in there if you pulled those garbage bags back or you emptied your garbage can and you looked at the bottom. Where did those come from? The garbage is what they feed on. The garbage didn't bring them, but the garbage is what they feed on. So they came to the garbage. They found their way there. Purifying the cellular environment. Did you know that every cell lives in a fluid-rich environment? So 75% of your body's water. When this fluid becomes polluted, it changes from an alkaline to an acid-rich environment, and that's how disease grows within the body. As far back as the early 1800s, research has indicated that indicated the importance of a clean cellular environment in the fight against this of illness. French physiologist Dr. Claude Bernard and Dr. Antoine Béchamp, a doctor, chemist, pharmacist, and microbiologist, believed It was the cellular environment, or what they called the milieu interior environment, that needed to remain clean to promote health and prevent illness. So it's not about fighting the germ as it is in changing the environment in which it lives. So there's that little goldfish. And if I put it in that dirty water, you would see that goldfish floating at the top. But if I change the water, simply put, the fish will live. However, French chemist Louis Pasteur wanted you to believe that by killing the germ, one could eradicate disease. This was known as the germ theory of disease, and would later become the way medicine was and is developed, and is running to this day. They want to give you a drug. They want to fight a virus. They want to fight whatever you want to call it. They want to attack the germ. And the physicians, the people that I work with and studied under, read about, what they were doing was changing the terrain. So when, for instance, when the doctor did my blood work and we found indications of a fungus infection and bacteria, he didn't just give me certain nutrients. Of course, he had to give me supplements to help supplement what was missing, but I had to eliminate other things out of my eating habit and my drinking habits. And I had to lower my stress, and I had to modify my exercise. You can't just work on one part. He couldn't just give me supplements, because if I had a rotten diet and I wasn't sleeping well and I was living under high stress and I was exercising too much, it's going to counteract what you're trying to do here. That's what I mean by a holistic approach. So you can't just fight the germ. You can't just take an anti-inflammatory medication and expect your inflammation to be gone. Temporarily, it will work. But if you get at the reasons why you have inflammation, why do you have a bacterial infection? Why am I so susceptible to these viruses? In fact, as my immune system got stronger, I could be next to somebody that was sick and I would never get sick. Because even if that bug flew up my nostrils, as they want you to believe, or if I came in contact with someone, my immune system and my defense was strong enough to mitigate the challenge, because that's what it's designed to do. Treating the symptom and not the cause is where medicine went and where we are today. Unlike his contemporaries, Dr. Claude Bernard and Dr. Antoine Béchamp, they were talking about treating the cause. Why is that germ there to begin with? Why is my host hosting a party to invite germs? So this information, if I might suggest, was taken from a few different documents, but this one in particular, Pasteur versus Béchamp. Now, this was just talking about Dr. Antoine Béchamp. They didn't talk about the works of Dr. Claude Bernard in this particular paper. Down here, as this author is writing here, we do not catch disease, we build it. We have to eat, drink, think, and feel them into existence. We work hard at developing our diseases. We must work just as hard at restoring health. The presence of germs does not constitute the presence of disease. Bacteria are scavengers of nature. They reduce dead tissue to its smallest element. They are not the cause of disease any more than flies and maggots cause garbage. So I rest my case. So for 9 years, I studied the difference between the germ theory and terrain theory. And I talked to plenty of practitioners and listened to, in particular, to Dr. Robert O. Young. He wrote a book called Reclaim Your Terrain. And in there, he also mentions the work of Antoine Béchamp and Dr. Claude Bernard and the whole, terrain versus the germ theory. And even to this day, he came on and really advocated about what he was seeing during the pandemic as a microscopist, looking at live blood cell analysis. He discovered during that time was amazing, and I keep listening to him and watching him to this day. There were other methods, holistic therapies, that were brushed under the rug, taken out of existence. You can hardly find their information now because of the censorship. Back when I was doing my research, I could find this stuff plentiful on the internet. And I had plenty of books. And I have books to this day that talk about using frequencies to mitigate health challenges. The body, as you're going to learn, is a cybernetic, bioelectric, magnetic organism. It runs like a battery. And what Dr. Royal Raymond Rife, a microscopist, discovered, he showed that organisms have resonant frequencies. We later find in other research that they've isolated now cancer to have a very low millivoltage compared to a healthy cell. So a cancerous cell has only 20 to 30 millivolts because it has been compromised. But a healthy cell vibrates and puts out 70 to 90 millivolts, which gives you energy. So those of you out there that have low energy, your battery is running low on millivolts. And if you've ever owned anything that is battery or electrical operated, that lose its power, whether your computer begins to run slow, your batteries begin to die in your flashlight, or maybe like when my battery's getting low on my weed whacker and it stops putting out the power to be able to continue, I have to change out the battery and put the other one on the charger to increase its power. He created devices, and there are plenty of devices now that help to increase your body's millivolts, in which then, once your body's millivolts and your energy is up, you've cleaned the environment, you've boosted the immune system. Now the body can heal itself the way it was designed, because it is a very, very intelligent organism. It has the ability to repair itself. It's just that man gets in the way of its repair, thinking that it knows better by giving you an aspirin, giving you a drug, saying, well, I have an aspirin deficiency, I have a statin drug deficiency. Well, if you have high cholesterol, your chemistry is out of balance. And even if you have to go on it, the goal is to get you off of it, like I did for my clients. But what I'm talking about here are frequencies. This is new to a lot of people, and I'm going to cover this a lot more in part two under the future of medicine. And did you know that cancer cannot exist in an oxygen and alkaline-rich environment? Dr. Otto Warburg was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology of Medicine in 1931. He suggested that cancer cells live in a hypoxic, very low oxygen and acidic conditions and derive energy from sugars by fermenting them the way yeast does. And that when oxygen is present, and when the system, whether it be your blood system, your lymphatic system, your body in general, becomes more alkaline, the charge goes up. And now your body can mitigate against cancer. Now your immune cells can operate without being in chaos, because if your immune cells are also at low voltage, plus they're overworked because you got disease everywhere, when the system's energy is down, that means all systems are down. So you have a circulating nervous system. It's called your immune system. And if your little immune system, it doesn't have the capability of sending and receiving messages, which is what it does by itself, because it's an intelligent organism, then you got a challenge. So again, we have all these challenges. We've had them all. But there are lots of ways that we need to embrace going forward in the future. Like I said, I was teaching people about this in the middle 90s. Now, again, my clients took control of their health, and so did the patients and clients that were working with other practitioners that I would associate with. But that's only a small group of people compared to the millions that didn't know about Dr. Otto Warburg's work. I didn't know about this when my mother had cancer. And there's another conversation about ozone, which gets, I'll tell you, if you Googled ozone, you're going to see it. Ozone treatments are, conspiracy, they're false, everything to push you away from the truth. And I met practitioners who actually, when I was getting ozone therapy to purify my body, has to be done by qualified practitioners, there's no doubt. But that practitioner got kicked out of the United States because she was getting so many benefits from her patients who were reversing their diseases by going to her. And then her son took over. He picked up where she left off. I got a chance to meet her when she came back. She eventually was able to come back after like 7 years. Ozone therapy. All right, now we're going to get into an area that, of course, I know very well with my background in orthopedic fitness. Solving the billion-dollar challenge. When you look at this image and look at all the symptoms, how many people do you know, or do you have any of these symptoms? Remember, more and more people were reporting this to me in the middle to late 90s, which prompted me to say, I got to go back to school. Became one of the largest costs to insurance companies worldwide. My clients were spending thousands and thousands of dollars going from doctor to doctor, therapy to therapy, only to get sometimes temporary relief or none before they came to me. Remember, when they came to me, I never worked alone, but I worked with practitioners who address the body like myself. 1.71 billion individuals worldwide have a musculoskeletal condition. 568 million of these cases are low back pain. 1 in 2 adults experience musculoskeletal pain. 80% of these chronic conditions can be prevented with lifestyle changes. There it is. 80% of them can be. Why do you think I stayed in the line of work that I did? And I created various businesses throughout the 90s. And one of the backbones to every one of them was about changing lifestyle. Ignoring these challenges or referring to them as part of the normal aging process and as normal aging pains has not worked. It's not normal. As an orthopedic fitness professional, I have been on the front lines for over 30 years and have seen this challenge grow firsthand. So musculoskeletal challenges. Again, I saw it grow in the 90s. I continue to see it grow in the beginning of the 21st century, right up until now. I still see it growing. Why? Why is it still growing? And then mental emotional health challenges have also grown substantially in the past 10 years. Statistics from the World Health Organization reveal a 13% increase in reported mental health disorders over the past 10 years. Globally, suicide rates are extremely high among young adults. Suicide is the second most common cause of death reported for those aged 15 to 29. And what I'm going to be telling you towards the end of this part one is when I created my 4 principles to wellness and movement. If you don't know what those 4 principles are, principle number 1 is emotional health, how we handle stress. Principle number 2 is biochemical health, how we sleep. Principle number 3 is nutritional health, how we digest, but also what and when we're eating and drinking. And principle number 4 is physical health and how we're moving. Why did I choose emotional health to be number 1 and not physical health, even though I was seeing so many people that had orthopedic challenges? Later on in my career, when I went back to school at the Czech Institute and got deeper and deeper into the studies of mind and body, I began to understand that the issue was in the tissue. That all of our orthopedic challenges and our health challenges like cardiovascular disease, cancer, autoimmune, etc., have an underlying factor in the emotional health area. So I put it as number 1 because your mind is the weakest muscle in the body. Your mind doesn't really control the body, although it controls functions and systems of the body. But what I teach my clients, and I've taught them since I created my first business in 1994 when I went into practice full-time for myself. The name of that business was called the Mind-Body Connection, based on the book I was reading at the time and the author that I got a chance to meet in person, Dr. Deepak Chopra. That the thoughts that we think, good or bad, produce chemicals, good or bad. You're thinking happy thoughts like you're in love, or you're going on vacation, you get an endorphin rush. But if you're thinking not so good thoughts like I'm getting a divorce, I just had a bankruptcy, then you're releasing other chemicals that depress the body. So it became important to understand just the baseline of my clients' emotional and mental health. But at no time during my work with them did I intervene other than gathering just basic information. Again, when I was in doubt, I would refer out. And I aligned myself with holistic practitioners in the area of behavioral health, one of them being a psychoneuroimmunologist who I actually saw for a while because I was also traumatized as a child. Yes, a lot of my clients, 80% of them, have some sort of PTSD. And then along came the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, the fear leading up to it. During the pandemic, the fear that we were engulfed in, really, and all the isolation, really changed our behaviors, and it still has to this day. In the first year of COVID-19 pandemic, global prevalence of anxiety and depression increased by a massive 25%. And again, I cite a lot of this information, or cited in my article, and that way I have reference to this, to these stats. People are still living in fear, and fear is a driver for change. If you want to control somebody, all you have to do is get them in fear. And when we talk about this mental emotional stress, look at this. Up to 90% of illness is directly connected to stress. Remember, like I said before, your immune system is a circulating nervous system. So when you're under high emotional stress, what you're doing is you're reducing immune function automatically. Certain foods, alcohol, etc., can suppress immune system. But what I'm talking about here is the body is holding the score. The issue is in the tissue. So the emotional pain chart, which I often refer to in things that I learn at the Czech Institute, is there are areas of the body where we hold specific types of emotion. So say, for an example, in the lower back and pelvic regions, which is the foundation of our structure, everything comes together at this part of the body, at the top of the hips into the buttocks. We load the upper torso and we connect it to the lower torso. This is our foundation, ladies and gentlemen. And like a foundation on a house, or like the foundation of your life, part of the foundation of you living is finances, isn't it? Part of the foundation of your life is having to do with relationships, isn't it? So when we look at our ability to handle our challenges, whether they be in the neck, with our inability to speak, and be in our shoulders, where everybody is carrying all their excess weight. They have the weight of the world on their shoulders. Their spine, the upper back, from emotional support, the middle of the back, being stuck in the past and using terms like, I wish the guy's like a monkey on my back. The lower back, fear of money, lack of financial support. The hips, the ability to go forward in life to make major decisions. And on we go. Which leads us into the perplexion of what the healthcare industry is overwhelmed with managing chronic physical and mental illness and is failing to keep us healthy, is it not? We are in a sick care program. It's not healthcare, it's sick care. If they can keep you just on the verge of getting sick, they got great repeat business. With all the advancements in medical technologies, orthopedic and primary care medicine, physical and occupational therapy, and all the advanced studies in medicine, health, and fitness, why are we still seeing a decline in our health and well-being? In addition, over the past 30 years, the concept of wellness has been increasingly embraced by communities, schools, workplaces, and healthcare providers in the United States and abroad, inspiring people to embrace healthier lifestyle. Yet the current state of our health and well-being are still declining. Doesn't make any sense, does it? The question we have to ask is, why is it still declining? Again, what's missing? Now, again, these are my views based on my own personal observation, working in the industry, dealing with health crises within my family and my friends, doing my own research, but talking to a lot of intelligent people. Here's what I think is missing. Utilizing an authentic, not a trendy wellness approach, but an authentic holistic approach, and applying various holistic therapies to treat the cause and not just the symptoms. A holistic approach using the, using the letter W refers to the whole body. The word defines the consideration of the entire person, which includes body, mind, and most importantly, your spirit. A holistic approach using the letter H refers to alternative healing therapies like homeopathy, Chinese and or Ayurvedic medicine. Enter the next evolution in the wellness and movement industry. As we move even further into the 21st century, both the wellness and movement industry will transform from a totally new perspective. I'm not talking about what the media is touting as the new trends, like the new technologies, gadgets, and using terms like metaverse. Not at all. Instead, what I'm referring to is looking at ways to heal the body by addressing the body as a whole and not the sum of its parts. Although some technologies have their place, most of the newer gadgets have yet to be understood. I will share my insights and discuss some of them in part 2. The human body is a cybernetic, bioelectrical magnetic organism, an integrated multi-dimensional system of systems. These body systems are interconnected and dependent upon one another to function. As Aristotle once said, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The body's 10-dimensional systems, skeletal, nervous, circulatory, lymphatic and immune, reproductive, endocrine, hormonal, urinary, respiratory, digestive, and musculature. Now, cybernetics is defined as a field of systems theory that studies circular causal systems whose outputs are also inputs, such as feedback systems. You see, ladies and gentlemen, there's a feedback system happening right now inside of your body, and you don't even have to control it. It's all automated. Autonomic nervous system, your heart rate, your heartbeats based on the cybernetic system. Your ability to catch a ball is based off of a cybernetic system. Placing your hand against something that's hot and having the sense to pull back is part of that output and inputs as a feedback system. Bioelectrical is defined as of or relating to electrical phenomena in living organisms. Your body is bioelectric. Like I said, it's like a battery. Your body's filled with electricity. And the voltage that runs your body, it's like the voltage that is required to run your automobile, and I'm not talking electric, needs to be operating at an optimal state of voltage, 70 to 90 millivolts. And remember, illness, as your millivolts drop, you're moving away from wellness and into illness. In other words, when your millivolts are healthy at 70 to 90, your body's at ease, you're not in chaos. Or the minute you look at the word disease, D-I-S-E-A-S-E, right? That's chaos. Put a hyphen between the S and an E, dis-ease. The body is not at ease. So you ask anybody, or maybe even you know this, I know that I always give this recommendation when people come to me in chaos. I'm in chronic pain. I want to exercise and I need to exercise, and I'm suggesting you need to do it easy. I'm gonna suggest exercise like I would suggest a medicine, which I would never suggest. But as a metaphor, Exercise is like medicine. If I give you the wrong exercise and it takes you out of being at ease, I've just drained you and not trained you. Magnetism and magnetic fields. Magnetism is a force of nature produced by moving electrical charges. You could not think without magnetism being working. And as I will go into more detail in part 2, have you ever walked into a room after somebody's had an argument and you can feel the tension? The magnetic energy is thick because when that person was arguing, two people, as they were emitting those negative thoughts at one another. Thoughts are things, ladies and gentlemen. Thoughts are things, as Dr. Candace Pert discovered beyond a shadow of a doubt. That when you have a thought, you have a messenger molecule that goes with that thought. Like I said earlier, when you're in love, you have a rainfall of peptides that are positive throughout the body. These molecules and these endorphins and these beautiful feelings rain through your body like a rainstorm of love. But when you're in hate and you're in frustration and chaos, you're producing tightness. Molecules get all deranged and chaotic, and they flood your system. So you see, we don't look at the body that way. We chopped it up into parts. You have a knee, when people come to me, they'll say, I have a knee problem. And I don't like the word problem at all because just very negative. But if you use the word challenge, it means to overcome. So they'll say, I got a back challenge. Right? I said, you're right. You do. And where's your pain? And then they point to it, I say, well, actually, you have a body challenge. And I'll get to this because your body's interconnected. All the orthopedic fitness systems that I designed when I worked either clinical or privately, people have come to me with knee challenges and back challenges and neck challenges. But as an example, I had a client who had a knee challenge. And I later found out that they had a tight hip. And then I later found out that they had an opposite shoulder that was also locked up and that their neck was out of alignment. But all they were doing was they were treating the knee and it would get better temporarily. And there were other things that we had to mitigate in that client's system. Looking at their wellness, their inflammation, what they were eating, all the emotional stress they were under. But here's my point. It's not one part. Your body works as an integrating unit. And that goes into our next definition, integration, combining or coordinating separate elements so as to provide a harmonious, interrelated whole. As Hippocrates states, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. All of these systems interact with one another. And a system is defined as a network of mutually dependent and interconnected components comprising a unified whole. So you see, this next evolution must address, if you're going to want to get to the cause, I'm tired of being in pain, Brian. I've had this low energy and this pain off and on for 10, 20 years. And I'm not kidding you when they come to me. I love the most difficult cases. And I have to start teaching them that you have all of your systems, including your energy system, which we'll get into in part 2, are all out of balance. And the journey of 1,000 miles, as Lao Tzu says, begins with one step. Each of your body's systems relies on the others to work well. Here are a few examples. Let's look at this. The skeletal system, the muscular system couldn't function without the nervous system. Anytime you move, there are messages sent from the brain to the body and vice versa to elicit movement and to sense how you move in space. So there's a movement system, and I call the body parts software, and your hardware is up here in the brain and your motor control and your sensory systems. That your nervous system, besides your endocrine and hormonal system, those are the two chief operating systems of the body. But here we're talking about movement. And going back, we have to be able to mitigate when someone has a movement-related challenge. Like I have a client who's coming to me who has lots of movement restrictions. When I rated his wellness, his 4 principles, which I'll get, the 2 highest ratings were in emotional and biochemical health. The 3rd was in physical health. The 4th one was nutrition. So we definitely got to make some changes nutritionally, but the number 1 was biochemical. Number 2 was emotional. Number 3 was physical. Most people that come to me with a physical challenge are thinking that's the number 1 reason I have pain, or I have movement restrictions, or I have a low performance. If they're an athlete, I can't throw quite as fast as I did. I can't jump quite as high. I can't run as quick. And sure, I can look at where you're tight, where you're weak, but I'm also going to look at your sleep, your emotion. I'm going to look at your nervous system to see if there's interference somewhere in the pathway, especially in the spinal column. Did you know that the immune system is a circulating nervous system? The immune system and its cells' innate intelligence can learn, send, and receive information and perform their functions without you telling it what to do. Like in this image here, the T cell attacking cancer. I didn't tell it to do that. It's doing right now, your immune system is doing its job without you telling it what to do. Whether it be a macrophage fighting bacterial infection, whether it be a T cell attacking cancer, et cetera, it has an innate intelligence. Even the digestive system influences the brain and our behavior via the gut-brain axis. That inside of your gut, you have selected microbes that are doing their job to keep that environment clean. A lot of your immune system lives in the gut. However, when the gut is out of balance, it has an influence on neurotransmitters. So when you're under a lot of stress, anxiety, and you're having fluctuations in your behavior, it'll have an impact on how you think, and vice versa. It'll have an impact on your stomach. You ever heard of the term nervous stomach? As well as the endocrine hormonal system helps to regulate your sleep-wake cycle, your circadian rhythm, metabolism, growth, just to name a few. As you will see, there are various organs in the body that have a regulatory response to the hormonal system. And when these organs are out of balance, and again, they're all interconnected. When your nervous system is under a high amount of stress, it has an effect on the organ. As an example, brains, organs, and tissues. If energy going through an organ, think of caffeine and your adrenals, is too high for optimal functioning, and the organ overheats, the organ will dump the excess energy into the muscles it shares direct neurological relationship with first to save itself. In this case, that muscle group would be your psoas. So the psoas has a neurological direct link with the adrenals, and the adrenals are located right on top of your kidneys. And look at where that is in the human body there. So you see that there? See where it's located? We look at where the psoas is, crosses that, the meridians cross and innervate with muscles and the circulatory system. They have a shared relationship. They share the load. That's what they call it, load sharing. Poor lifestyle habits and behaviors increase the risk of health challenges. Poor lifestyle habits, along with increased stress, are the major contributing factors to all illness and injuries. Lifestyle habits include our thoughts and our emotions and our perceptions of life, our sleep, eating and drinking habits, and how much we exercise. In addition, there is also the overusage of technology, such as cell phones, computers, tablets, and other smart devices. If not properly managed, they can all create an increase of stress on the body. I'm going to cover this in part 2. There is scientific evidence to show that the overuse of electronic devices can disrupt our own biofield. That's a term that you're going to learn about, and a body part that they took away from you that you have no idea that they are now infiltrating directly, but it can disrupt that. It's sort of like when there's a disruption in frequency. So remember radios with antennas? Remember that? If you're under 40 years old, you probably don't remember those radios. But remember when you're trying to get in your favorite station and you're hitting that dial on the radio, and you get it just right, but if you move the radio, you get static? Because the frequency is not receiving or being received by the radio. Your human body has an antenna, has a field. You're going to learn this in part 2. And these disruptions by these devices, if not used intelligently, I'm not saying we're all going to have to live with computers, but we have to use them intelligently, just like exercise. Exercise is good for you too. But if you don't use it intelligently, you're going to end up in my office. I've seen plenty of exercise-induced injuries because people's behaviors or lifestyles were out of balance. They exercised too hard, too quick, and they burnt out. Remember, you either drain or you train. I have found in my research and personal experience the cultivating of an authentic, holistic approach using various holistic therapies, an integrated approach to wellness and movement is the only way to reduce these various stresses. One that views the body in such a way, whether treating illness or orthopedic challenges. The only way that I was able to find long-term relief for my body, I'm on no drugs, none. And believe me, I took a lot of anti-inflammatories when I was an athlete and pain medication. My clients is using an authentic, holistic approach. Embracing this type of an approach will help mitigate illness and pain. We should be harnessing the natural healing abilities of the body because the body is an innate self-healing organism. But what we did is we got in the way by not looking and not teaching the public about certain things that they had every right to know as far as what exists. Instead, they took it out of the textbooks. They took it out of the libraries. They took it off of the internet. It's time to embrace change, ladies and gentlemen. We can start mitigating these stressors by making small changes like eliminating all processed and GMO inorganic foods. And I'm going to put down alcohol, sodas, and soft sport drinks because I know I'm going to get a few sour pusses because I'm saying alcohol, sodas, and sport drinks. As an I'll call myself an alcoholic and a drug user and a soda-aholic and a sport drink-aholic. I know. And the only way that I was really going to reach my potential, both as an instructor in my line of work and as increasing my potential in my wellness and movement, was to eliminate these and purify my body. And other toxic non-foods and liquids that only create illness and pain. It all depends where you are on your path. Pain to me is your greatest teacher. Illness to me is your greatest teacher, was mine. There's an underlying issue here that your body is trying to bring to your attention, not just bring to your attention, hey, you got high cholesterol, maybe you should change the way you're eating. Well, maybe your arteries are getting tight because you're holding on to life too hard. Maybe you got repetitive knee problems because you're stubborn and you have instabilities in your inner core. Maybe you have, depression because as a child, you were never heard as a child and you sat alone many days and cried. There's an emotional component. But what I'm saying here is the reason we have these wellness and movement challenges isn't just because we're out of balance mechanically and biochemically. Yes, we are. What I've found in my own case studies and in my own body, but there was also imbalances that weren't being addressed emotionally. Replacing all of these with herbs, superfood supplements, eating organic, non-GMO food, and drinking purified, structured water, along with enhancing lifestyle habits and behaviors that help lower all forms of stress. Here are a few ways to lower your stress. Meditation, sitting quietly. Mindfulness, be aware of your thoughts. Don't become a thought police. Don't overthink about things. But as I often teach my clients and I use for myself, when stress comes up, I welcome it because it is reminding me that I'm attached to something that isn't real. But it is real. I have financial concerns. I have relationship concerns. Yes, it's real to that extent. But overthinking about it and getting wound up in the story of victimhood is not going to make it go away. I know because I lived it. Meditation is a way to start training the mind so that in everyday life, when I'm out in everyday life, when I had all these technical challenges with my computer last week, and I lost all the video footage, because this is the second time I'm doing this. I lost all programs on my computer. And I was telling one of my clients that over the last 10 years, I've responded more and reacted less to major challenges. And this time, with this time it happened, I was at 95% in a response. And the 5% of me that was reactive, I quickly redirected and cooled it like ice on heat. Tai Chi, Qigong, light yoga if you're under high stress, walks in nature, preferably with bare feet so you can ground against the ground. You can ground your electrical system. Raise the millivolts, release the chaos. Things like painting, writing, and or journaling, sculpting, or gardening are all ways to reduce your stress. But while you're doing the walks and the yoga and the painting, etc., where should your mind be? Where should your mind be? Here and now. When I taught martial arts, my kids would get distracted. I said, well, where are we? Where are we right now? As a young child with attention deficit disorder and reading challenges, I would have to go to special reading classes with an instructor. And when I'd start to get distracted, she'd do this. Where are we? Get right here with me, Brian, right back here. What she was doing, she was drawing me back to the present moment. We're right here, right now. Give yourself some comfort. Give yourself some self-forgiveness and compassion, and most importantly, love yourself. Yes, the current state is not looking good, but I have a lot of hope because I'm providing a lot of solutions for you here. And the majority of my clients and the majority of this market is driven by the baby boomers. Most of the wellness market is driven by the baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964. Baby boomers are the first generation in history that refuses to blindly accept the aging process. As the baby boomers get older, they begin to desire how to retain their youthfulness, defying aging, and continue to move through life with more ease. These baby boomers are most receptive to looking at lifestyle changes. They realize that a wellness approach is the answer. In the 90s, I was often asked by my baby boomer clients, I want to know more about acupuncture, Brian, that you're talking about. I want to know more about a mind-body approach. I want to know more about purifying the body. But the key words here, I want to know more. They became the I want more generation. As our parents didn't want to know about this, and a lot of them thought it was voodoo, or some of them came around. They're still around. They're very healthy because they adopted it. We, as their children, began to want to know more. And that's how I built my businesses in the 90s, was built mainly by baby boomers who wanted to embrace a more holistic approach. I've always embraced a holistic approach in coordinating my business and businesses with various holistic practitioners who used holistic therapies, acupuncturists, naturopathic doctors, chiropractors, massage therapists, nutritionists, and various mind-body practitioners who specialize in behavioral health. I've always viewed the body as an integrated multi-dimensional system, starting as far back as 1994 when I launched my first business, the Mind-Body Connection. However, in 2004, that's when I began to learn that the body was a cybernetic, bioelectrical magnetic organism, an integrated multi-dimensional system of systems, which forever changed the way I would view treating the body. Based on all this and the emerging trends, I created both the wellness movement services and my 4 principles to wellness and movement. Each principle is integrated with the other, accordingly to truly optimize a person's overall wellness and movement. All principles must be addressed. The image of the human body in the middle of my logo illustrates how each principle is interconnected within the human body, which relates with a holistic approach. In part 2, the future of medicine, going beyond the 10-dimensional systems into the 11th dimensional system and beyond, the human biofield, a part of the body no one is talking about. Its origins go back hundreds of years. This field of energy surrounds the body and every cell within your body. It acts as a transmitter and receiver of information and makes up 80% of your immune system. Wait till you hear what I'm going to share. I've never shared this information in all the years that I've done presentations. I can't wait to dive into part 2. I hope you enjoyed this. Please share it with those that you love and you care about. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'd like to learn more about my services, my contact information is located at the end of this video. I share because I care. I'm here to serve as the Lord has given me this information of knowledge and wisdom. Most importantly, I'm Brian Schwager saying have an empowering day. Live with passion. Take it one day at a time. Be well, and bye for now.